My name is Adam. I am 28 years old, and for the longest time, I thought I had grown immune to surprises. Life in my neighborhood had always been a routine of familiar faces, repeated sounds, and predictable rhythm of everyday life. The same tea shop at the corner, the same grocery vendor who weighed the tomatoes a little lighter than he should, the same children running with their laughter echoing through the narrow streets. Nothing ever truly changed until my neighbor arrived. He was 25. At first glance, nothing about him suggested he would disturb the balance of my life. He looked ordinary. Plain shirts, sometimes a backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder, hair that refused to stay neatly combed. But there was something in his eyes, something sharp yet distant, that made me notice him the first time we crossed paths. It was a late evening, the kind when the sun has just slipped behind the buildings, but its warmth lingers faintly in the air. I was walking down the street toward the small shop when I saw him standing at the gate of his house, fumbling with his phone. He glanced up just as I passed. Our eyes met for a brief second. He gave me the smallest nod, polite, almost cautious. I returned the gesture and continued walking. Nothing much happened, but that moment replayed in my head later that night. I couldn't explain why. The second time was more accidental. It was a busy afternoon. The narrow street was crowded with motorbikes and people hurrying home. I had a bag of groceries in one hand. When I bumped into someone, the onions tumbled onto the pavement. Before I could bend down, he was already crouched, gathering them with quick hands. "Sorry," I muttered, embarrassed. He shook his head with a faint smile. "My fault. I wasn't looking." Our fingers brushed as he handed me an onion, and something about the simple touch made my chest tighten unexpectedly. He stood up, dusted off his hands, and gave me a friendly nod before disappearing into the crowd. I stood there longer than I should have, watching him walk away, wondering why such a small encounter lingered in my thoughts. The third time was the most memorable. It was late at night, around 11, when the street was quiet except for the distant bark of stray dogs. I had stepped outside for some air, pacing slowly beneath the dim streetlight. That's when I saw him again. He was sitting on the low wall near his house, earphones plugged in, head tilted slightly upward as though lost in his own world. I hesitated before approaching, unsure if he would welcome company, but when I greeted him softly, he removed one earphone and looked at me with a half-smile. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. "Something like that," he replied. His voice carried a weight I couldn't place, as though it had traveled through silence before reaching me. We exchanged only a few sentences that night, but I walked back to my room feeling strangely lighter, as though his presence had eased something in me. That was the moment I realized I didn't just want to be a polite neighbor anymore. I wanted to know him, his thoughts, his stories, the reasons behind the guarded look in his eyes. Over the days that followed, I found myself anticipating his presence. My steps slowed whenever I passed his house. My ears sharpened whenever I thought I heard his voice outside. It was as though the ordinary street we both shared had suddenly gained meaning, each corner carrying the possibility of another unexpected meeting. I began to wonder about him, what he did, where he went during the day, what kind of secrets he might be carrying behind that quiet face. Curiosity can be a dangerous thing, but it was curiosity mixed with something softer, something warmer. I couldn't deny the nervous excitement that bubbled in me whenever I thought about our next encounter. After our third meeting, I lay awake late into the night. My mind replayed the sound of his voice, the way he had looked at me in the stillness of the streetlight. I felt restless, as though I was standing at the edge of something new, something unknown. That was when the idea came to me. The next time we met, I wouldn't let it end with small talk or polite smiles. No, I wanted to take him somewhere different, somewhere away from the crowded street and the walls of our houses. A place where conversation could breathe and where silence wouldn't feel like a barrier, but a bridge. I didn't yet know what I would say to him or how he would respond, but the thought alone filled me with anticipation. The routine of my life, once dull, once predictable, now carried a quiet thrill. Every evening, as the sky darkened, I found myself waiting for that familiar sound of footsteps, hoping it would be him. Something told me that the next time would matter, that it wouldn't just be another chance encounter. It would be the moment I dared to step closer, the moment I discovered whether my curiosity was meant to fade away as a passing distraction or to grow into something neither of us could ignore. So I waited, heart restless, thoughts circling endlessly. And when the night finally came at 9 o'clock sharp and he appeared at my door, I was ready. At least I thought I was. Little did I know, that night would not go the way I imagined. The clock had just struck 9. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every little sound feel louder than it really is. I was sitting by the window, restless, rehearsing in my head what I might say when I saw him. I didn't know if he would come, but when I heard the soft knock on my door, my heart leapt. I hurried to open it, expecting his usual half-smile, that careful, reserved expression he always wore. But instead, I was met with something I had never seen before, his face tight with anger, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with something raw and sharp. Before I could greet him, his voice cut through the air. "You think I wouldn't find out?" he snapped. I froze. "Find out what?" His hands were trembling slightly, fists half formed at his sides. "That you've been telling people about me. My secrets. Things I trusted you with." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. My mind scrambled, searching for some explanation, but none made sense. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "Don't play innocent," he shot back, his voice rising. I heard it, word for word. "Someone repeated things only you knew, and you expect me to believe it's a coincidence." The accusation struck me like a physical blow. My chest tightened, my throat dry. "I swear to you," I said quickly, my words tripping over themselves, "I never told anyone anything about you. Why would I? I haven't spoken a word to anyone." But he wasn't listening. His anger had built its own walls. He shook his head, pacing in the small space between us. I should have known better. This is why I don't trust people. This is why I keep to myself. "Please," I said, stepping closer. "Look at me. Do I look like I'm lying? I wouldn't betray you. Not you." He stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto mine, filled with pain disguised as fury. "Don't," he muttered. "Don't make it sound like I mean something to you. It only makes it worse." The words cut deeper than his anger. I felt a desperation claw at me, the fear of losing him before we had even truly begun. My mind raced back to our brief meetings, those small exchanges that had felt so meaningful to me. Had they meant nothing to him? Was this how it would end? Before anything could start? "Listen to me," I begged, my voice breaking. "I don't know who told you these lies, but it wasn't me. I would never, ever do that to you. You have to believe me." He crossed his arms, his body stiff, his voice heavy with bitterness. "That's the problem. I don't know if I can believe anyone anymore, and certainly not you." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. My chest ached with the weight of his mistrust. Finally, he exhaled sharply and said, "This is it. Whatever we had, these meetings, these talks, it ends tonight. I don't want to see you again." The words felt like a door slamming shut inside me. My heart sank, the ground beneath me seeming to disappear. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out at first. My thoughts were tangled, my emotions raw. "You don't mean that," I finally whispered. "You're just angry. You'll regret saying it." He shook his head slowly, his expression firm, though I saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes. "No, I won't. I can't risk it. Whatever this was, it's over." I reached out instinctively, my hand brushing against his arm. "Please don't do this," I said. "At least give me a chance to prove myself. Don't cut me off like this." He pulled away, the rejection sharp, final. "There's nothing to prove. You broke the one thing that mattered. Trust." The word echoed inside me like a bell. Trust. The very thing I wanted to build, to strengthen. And now it was slipping away because of something I hadn't even done. I tried again, my voice trembling. "Tell me what you heard. Tell me exactly what they said. Maybe I can explain." But he cut me off. It doesn't matter. The fact that it's out there is enough. You were the only one I spoke to. Who else could it have been? I felt helpless, trapped in a storm I didn't create. I wanted to scream, to shake him until he saw the truth in my eyes. Instead, I could only stand there, my heart pounding, my breath uneven. Please, I whispered again, softer this time, almost to myself. Don't walk away from me. But he had already turned toward the door. The moment he stepped outside, the night air rushed in, cold and unforgiving. He didn't look back as he walked away, his footsteps fading into the silence of the street. I stood frozen at the doorway, my chest aching, my eyes burning with unshed tears. I wanted to chase after him, but my legs refused to move. I wanted to call his name, but the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I closed the door slowly, the sound of it shutting echoing in the empty room like a final verdict. Alone, I sank onto the chair by the window, staring at the street where he had just disappeared. My thoughts spun in circles. Why would he think that of me, who had twisted things so cruelly? How could I make him see that I was innocent? But above all, one thought rose louder than the rest. What if I never saw him again? The idea clawed at me, filling me with a hollow ache I hadn't known was possible. I hadn't realized how much he mattered until the threat of losing him became real. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the anger, the disappointment, the finality in his voice. And each time, I felt the same crushing weight in my chest. It was the lowest point I had known in years, a darkness deeper than I could have anticipated. I had planned something beautiful for that night, a step toward something new, something meaningful. Instead, I was left with silence, emptiness, and a lingering echo of his words. This is it. It ends tonight. And yet, somewhere beneath the despair, a fragile spark remained. A whisper in the back of my mind that said this couldn't be the end. Not like this. I didn't know how, but I promised myself I would find a way to make him believe me. The morning after he walked away felt heavier than any morning I could remember. The street outside bustled as usual. Children chasing each other, vendors shouting prices, the smell of fresh bread drifting from the bakery on the corner. But to me, everything seemed muted, dull, stripped of color. I sat by the window, replaying every word he had said the night before. His anger, his pain, his finality. I had thought I was ready for that evening, ready to take him to a place that mattered to me, but instead, I was left with silence. I couldn't let it end like that. The thought struck me with a force that left no room for doubt. Whatever it took, I couldn't lose him, not over a lie, not over a misunderstanding. He mattered too much, more than I had admitted, even to myself. I thought of our first meeting, that cautious nod at the gate. The second, when he helped me gather my scattered groceries. The third, when we sat in the quiet night, our words few but our silence somehow shared. Those moments had seemed small at the time, but together they had become a thread woven into the fabric of my days. Without them, without him, there was an emptiness I couldn't bear. So I decided to act. At first, I sent him a message, a simple one. Please, I didn't tell anyone. I need you to believe me. Hours passed without a reply. The silence on my screen cut deeper than any harsh word could. But I refused to stop. The next morning, I wrote again, I don't know who twisted things, but it wasn't me. You mean more to me than you realize. Please give me a chance to prove it. Still nothing. On the third day, I walked past his house deliberately, slowing my steps, hoping for a glimpse of him. I saw the curtains shift once, just slightly, but he didn't come out. That flicker of movement was enough to tell me he had seen me, though, and if he had seen me, maybe he had read my messages too. That night, unable to contain my restlessness, I knocked gently on his door. When it opened, only a fraction, his face appeared in the gap, wary, guarded, but present. What do you want? He asked, his voice flat. I swallowed hard. To talk. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. He hesitated, then shook his head. There's nothing to say. There's everything to say. I insisted. You think I betrayed you. I didn't. And until you let me explain, you'll keep believing a lie. His eyes narrowed. And why should I believe you now? Words are easy. Because I haven't stopped trying, I said, my voice cracking with urgency. If I were guilty, I'd have walked away by now. But I can't, because you matter to me more than you know. For a moment, silence hung between us. I could see the conflict in his expression, the part of him that wanted to shut the door, and the part that couldn't quite bring himself to. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, he opened the door wider. 5 minutes, he muttered. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. The room smelled faintly of coffee and dust, a simple space with books stacked haphazardly and a chair pulled close to the window. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as though to remind me that I was still unwelcome. I took a breath. Tell me exactly what you heard. Please. His eyes flickered. Someone repeated things I told you, personal things, about my past, about my family. Who else could it have come from? My heart ached at the pain behind his words. I don't know, I admitted, but I swear it wasn't me. I've kept every word you've said locked inside me. I wouldn't break that trust. Not yours. He studied me for a long moment, as though searching my face for cracks, for signs of deception. You're asking me to believe you against what I've heard with my own ears. I'm asking you to believe me against what someone wants you to think, I said softly, because maybe they wanted to hurt you, or maybe they guessed. But I would never throw your secrets into the street. Do you really see me doing that? His silence stretched heavy, but his arms slowly uncrossed. His posture softened just slightly. I don't know, he murmured finally. Trust doesn't come easy to me. It never has. I've been burned before. I stepped closer, cautiously. Then let me be different. Let me be the one who doesn't let you down. He looked at me, and for the first time since that night, I saw the anger in his eyes give way to something else. Something fragile, something uncertain. You make it sound so simple, he said. It isn't, I admitted. It's hard. It'll take time. But I'm willing to wait to prove myself if you let me. The room felt still, as though holding its breath. My chest ached with hope and fear all tangled together. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're stubborn, you know that? I let out a shaky laugh. I've been told. And maybe, he paused, his voice quieter now, maybe I want to believe you, even if I shouldn't. Those words sent a rush of warmth through me, fragile but real. Then let me give you a reason to, I whispered. We talked for longer than 5 minutes. What started as suspicion and defense slowly turned into something else. I told him about my own life, my own fears, pieces of myself I rarely shared. Not because he asked, but because I wanted him to see that trust wasn't just a word. I was willing to risk it too. And as the minutes slipped by, his voice softened, his shoulders relaxed. He asked questions, small ones at first, then deeper ones. For the first time since the fight, I saw a flicker of the person I had met under the streetlight, the one who had let down his guard for just a moment. When I finally stood to leave, he didn't stop me, but he didn't push me away either. At the door, I turned to him. Does this mean you'll see me again? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. He hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. Maybe. Don't make me regret it. A smile broke across my face, small but genuine. I won't. As I stepped out into the cool night air, my heart felt lighter than it had in days. The pain wasn't gone, the mistrust wasn't erased, but a door had been left open. A fragile hope had taken root where despair once lived, and that was enough. For now. It took another week before he agreed to meet me again. The silence between us during those days felt like walking across a frozen river, every step careful, afraid the ice might break. Sometimes he would reply to my messages with a single word, sometimes not at all. But he didn't shut me out completely, and that gave me enough courage to keep trying. Finally, one evening, when the sky was streaked with orange and the first stars were beginning to appear, I asked, "Would you come with me somewhere? Just for a while." He hesitated, as expected. His eyes searched mine, as though weighing the risk. "Where?" "You'll see," I said softly. "It's nothing dangerous. Just somewhere I want to share with you." A long pause followed before he finally gave the smallest nod. "All right, but only for a little while." Relief surged through me. I didn't show it too much, afraid of scaring him off, but inside, I was smiling like I hadn't in weeks. We walked side by side through the quiet streets. At first, the silence between us was thick, filled with a memory of everything that had gone wrong. But as the steps carried us further, I felt the weight slowly lifting. His arms were folded, his eyes often darting away, yet he didn't pull away when our shoulders brushed once or twice. The place I wanted to take him wasn't far, a rooftop above an old building at the edge of the neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Whenever I needed to think, to breathe, I climbed those creaky stairs and sat under the wide sky, the city lights glowing faintly in the distance. It was where I kept my own secrets, where I had written down thoughts I never shared with anyone. And tonight, I wanted him there. When we reached the building, he raised an eyebrow. "Here, trust me," I said with a small smile. "It'll make sense." We climbed the narrow staircase, our footsteps echoing on the concrete. He muttered something about the steps being too steep, but he didn't turn back. At the top, I pushed open a rusted door and let the cool night air wash over us. The rooftop stretched wide, the city visible beyond, 1,000 little lights scattered like fallen stars. Above, the sky was clear, endless, with constellations peeking through. The breeze carried a quietness that felt both vast and intimate. He stepped forward, his expression softening despite himself. "Wow," he murmured. "I come here when I need space," I admitted, watching him take it in. "When I need to feel small and big at the same time." He glanced at me, something unreadable in his gaze. "And you brought me here?" "Yes," I said simply, "because this is the most private place I know. If I wanted to prove to you that I'd never betray your trust, this is how. By letting you into mine." For a moment, he didn't reply. He walked to the edge, looking down at the faint lines of the street below. His profile was lit softly by the glow of the city, and for the first time in days, I saw the tension in his face ease just a little. We sat down on the old concrete ledge, side by side. For a while, we said nothing, just watching the stars settle deeper into the sky. Then, softly, he spoke. "Do you know why I reacted the way I did? Why I accuse you so easily?" I turned toward him. "Because you've been hurt before?" He nodded. "More times than I care to count. People have a way of taking what I give them and turning it into a weapon. Secrets become rumors. Fears become jokes. It's easier to assume betrayal than to risk it again." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm sorry for what they did, for making you feel like you couldn't trust anyone." He shrugged, though his eyes betrayed the heaviness of the memory. "That's life. You learn to carry it. But when I thought it was you," he paused, his voice faltering. "It hurt differently, because you were the last person I wanted to lose." The word struck me like a quiet thunder. I turned my face away briefly, afraid my expression would give away too much. My heart beat faster, warmth blooming in my chest. "I didn't want to lose you either," I admitted. "That night, when you walk away, it felt like everything inside me just collapsed. That's why I couldn't stop trying. I need you to believe me, because you matter more than you think." He was quiet, his gaze fixed on the horizon, but his shoulders weren't as tense as before. His voice, when it came, was softer. "And if I believe you, then what?" "Then," I said, "we start again, slowly, carefully, but honestly this time. No walls, no running away." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes give way to something gentler. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "I don't open up easily." "Neither do I," I confessed with a faint smile. "But maybe that's why we understand each other." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It felt like a pause, a breath shared between us. To seal the moment, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. Its edges were frayed, the cover faded. I placed it gently between us. "This is mine," I said quietly. "Every thought I've been too afraid to say out loud is written here. Fears, memories, things I've never shown anyone." He looked at it, then at me, his brows furrowed. "You're giving it to me? I'm trusting you with it." I corrected. "If I can do that, will you trust me too?" His hand hesitated before picking up the notebook. He didn't open it right away, just held it carefully, as though it were fragile. His eyes softened, and when he finally spoke, his voice was thick with something unspoken. "You're insane," he murmured. "Maybe," I said, my heart racing. "But at least I'm sincere." For the first time in what felt like forever, a real smile tugged at his lips. It wasn't big, it wasn't certain, but it was enough to fill me with relief. We sat there a long time, the night deepening around us, sharing pieces of ourselves in words and silences alike. The distance that had nearly broken us was beginning to close, slowly, cautiously, but undeniably. As the stars shone above, I knew something had shifted. Something fragile, yes, but real. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we were moving towards something neither of us had expected. After that night, something shifted between us. It wasn't just that he had agreed to give me another chance. It was the way his presence seemed warmer, less guarded. When I saw him again, there wasn't the usual tension in his shoulders. Instead, his eyes lingered on me longer, as if testing whether I was still the same person he had doubted, or if I had truly earned my place in his trust. I didn't need to speak much. Just being around him felt like proof enough. We no longer crossed paths, only by accident on the street. Slowly, our meetings became more deliberate. Sometimes, I would suggest we get tea from the corner shop and sit by the roadside to drink it together. Other times, he would message me first, asking if I was free for a walk. That was new. Before, it was always me reaching out, me taking the first step. But now, he was the one choosing me, and that small shift carried a weight I can hardly describe. Our walks were often aimless, but they had meaning because we were together. We would wander down quiet lanes or sit on the steps outside an old library, talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes he would fall silent, lost in thought, and I'd let the quiet linger. I had learned that pushing him never worked. Silence itself was a kind of conversation, a space where he could breathe, and when he did speak, it was always worth waiting for. There were moments of laughter, too, unexpected and unrestrained. Once, as we passed through a park, a stray dog began following us, wagging its tail insistently. He was terrified of dogs, though he would never admit it, and he tried walking faster to escape it. I couldn't help laughing at the sight of him glancing nervously over his shoulder, his steps turning into a near run. "It likes you," I teased, almost doubled over with laughter. He glared at me for a second, then broke into laughter himself. That was the first time I saw him laugh so freely, without his usual restraint. The sound of it stayed with me long after, a small treasure I carried in my memory. But not everything between us was easy. There were times when misunderstandings returned, like shadows that refused to leave completely. One evening, I suggested meeting at a cafe where I often worked, and he grew suspicious, asking if I had told anyone we were coming. The sharp edge in his voice stung, but this time I didn't argue. I simply looked him in the eyes and said softly, "I would never put you in a place where you felt unsafe." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his expression softened and he nodded. That was all it took. Unlike before, he didn't walk away. We were learning to bend instead of break. What surprised me most was how quickly trust began to take root. He didn't open up all at once. He never would, but I could see the small changes. He started telling me about ordinary things. His work, his frustrations, his daily routines. At first, these details seemed trivial, but to me, they were priceless. They were pieces of his life he hadn't offered before. Each one felt like a gift, and I treated them with the care they deserved. Sometimes, I caught him watching me carefully as he spoke, as though measuring my reactions, wondering if I would mock him, dismiss him, or betray him. I made sure my answers were honest, never exaggerated. If I didn't know what to say, I simply listened. And slowly, I noticed his shoulders relax, his words flow more easily. Trust wasn't something that came with declarations. It was built quietly, moment by moment, choice by choice. Then came the night he shared something I will never forget. We were sitting by the riverside, the city lights reflected in the dark water. It was late, and the air carried a calmness that made every sound seem sharper. He was unusually quiet, and I resisted the urge to fill the silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. "There's something I've never told anyone," he began. My heart quickened, but I kept my face steady, encouraging without pressing. He went on, revealing a part of his life that explained so much: the guardedness, the suspicion, the fear of betrayal. It wasn't a grand confession, but it was intimate, raw, and undeniably his truth. He looked at me when he finished, as if bracing himself for judgment. I remember the weight of that moment, the realization that he had placed something fragile in my hands. My response mattered more than any words I had ever spoken to him before. I reached out not to touch him, but to let my voice carry the sincerity I felt. "Thank you for trusting me," I said softly. "Nothing more, nothing less." And in his eyes, I saw something shift again. Relief, perhaps, or maybe the first flicker of belief that I wasn't someone who would let his secrets escape. That night, as I walked home alone, I felt a warmth in my chest that no chill could touch. It wasn't joy in the simple sense. It was deeper, steadier. I knew then that our connection was no longer casual. What had started as chance meetings in the street had grown into something delicate and strong all at once. Trust is fragile, I realize, but it is also alive. It can be broken, yes, but it can also heal and grow if tended to with patience. And as I thought of him, his guarded smile, his hesitant laughter, and the secret he had finally shared, I knew that I wanted to keep tending to it, for as long as he would let me. The turning point came quietly, without ceremony, as most important moments do. We were walking home after one of our late-night talks, the street almost empty, the air cool and still. He had been quieter than usual, not with suspicion this time, but with thoughtfulness. I didn't press him, just walked beside him, letting the silence stretch in the easy way it sometimes did between us. At one corner, under the dim glow of a street lamp, he stopped. I turned to face him, expecting a casual remark, but instead he looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, half vulnerable, half resolved. His voice was low, steady, but carrying a weight that pressed against my chest. "I've been unfair to you," he said. "From the very beginning. I doubted your intentions. I kept waiting for the moment you'd prove me right, that you'd betray me like others have. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. You never once gave me a reason to be afraid. And still, I push you away." I felt my throat tighten. His words were not dramatic, but they carried all the meaning in the world. I had longed to hear them, not for my own pride, but because it meant he finally saw the truth, that I had always been on his side. Before I could answer, he continued, softer now, "I'm sorry, truly, for every time I doubted you, for every wall I put up. I see now that you've only ever been trying to stand beside me." The apology was simple, but it broke something open in both of us. I had imagined this moment many times, yet the reality was gentler, quieter, more human than anything I could have dreamed. I didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, I let it breathe, because I wanted him to feel the weight lift from his own heart. When I finally spoke, my voice shook with the emotion I'd been carrying for so long. "You don't owe me anything except your truth. And tonight you gave me that. That's all I've ever wanted." His eyes softened, and for the first time, there was no distance between us, not in suspicion, not in hesitation. Just two people, standing in the stillness of night, finally meeting without walls. We didn't embrace, not then. The moment didn't call for grand gestures. Instead, we resumed walking, side by side, our steps falling into an unspoken rhythm. There was peace in that, an understanding that didn't need words. At the edge of town, where the noise of the streets gave way to quiet fields, we stopped again. The sky stretched above us, clear and full of stars. We tilted our heads back at the same time, and for a long moment, we simply stood there, stargazing like children who had stumbled upon the universe for the first time. Without thinking, my hand brushed against his. It could have been an accident, but he didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers found mine, tentative at first, then steady. The warmth of his hand in mine said everything we hadn't needed to put into words. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic vow, just a quiet certainty that trust had been rebuilt, that doubts had dissolved into something lasting. We didn't need to define it, because we already understood. As we turned back toward home, our joined hands swinging gently between us, I felt lighter than I had in months. The road was the same as always, the night just as ordinary, but everything inside us had changed. That night, I knew we would never doubt each other again.